Hello again, you're watching Everard Junction, and today, as promised, I'm going to show you how I create the hillside scenery along here. I've done this to get a little bit more height and just makes things look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more natural. You can see it gives a nice backdrop to the track. I'm going to be working the scenery all the way down this side to get the scene to flow together really nicely. So I'm going to go over there and work on the next few pieces. I use loads of stuff to build up the effect. First thing I use to get the bulk of it is these bushes that I made. They're made from this lichen stuff, which you can get from most model shops. On its own, it doesn't look that realistic. So what I do is I soak it all in glue and I'll roll it around in some clump foliage such as this, and then the end result is you get larger pieces like this, which are really good for building up larger areas. To complement that, I use Woodland Scenics bushes. Particular favourite of mine is the olive green variety. As you can see, I've already used quite a lot of it. I've also got some other colours as well. Finishing touches are done using fine leaf foliage. That's this stuff over here. Just creates the effect of small trees and bushes that are growing slightly above the rest of the scene. I've also got some ordinary olive green and medium green foliage down here, which I just use for ground cover. I'll also be using Woodland Scenics trees where appropriate. These are the ones that you make yourself using the tree armatures and then by attaching fine leaf foliage to the branches. First thing I'm going to put in is a tree. I'm going to use quite a large one, and I'll probably put it around here. I'd like to get a few more trees working their way up towards the forest at the top of the tunnel, so I'll put one in now. I just put a hole in the plaster bandage that the hillside is based on and then glue the tree in. I'll then glue some of the tree to the back of the back scene here just to hold it in the upright position. Okay, so the tree's in position. I've just super glued a couple of the branches to the back scene so it stays upright. That should be okay for now. Now what I'll do is I'll start the process of adding all the shrubbery in the foreground. Okay, now comes the bit that really makes the difference, and that's putting all of the clump foliage in. I've mixed up a batch of various colours, but predominantly, as you can see, it's olive green. It just happens to be a colour I really like and think looks quite good. Now I'm going to add in the fine leaf foliage. This is also olive green. I'm just going to be using relatively small pieces. But it's impressive what a difference this stuff actually makes. You can also use it to make small trees, such as this one here. that's pretty much it. You can add other effects and bits and pieces if you want, and feel free to adjust it slightly as you work your way along. Also important not to completely cover it, so areas such as here, you can still see the brown paint underneath. The whole thing is not going to get covered with all the bushes, but building them up like this makes a nice backdrop for passing trains. Next thing to do is to spray the lot with some water and get it all nice and wet, and then apply a load of glue over the top of that and let it all soak in, and about a day later it'll all set hard, and then any work you do on the layout shouldn't disturb it. I've been all the way along the main line. I've done everything. I haven't done the top of the tunnel yet. Run out of some of the materials, but I'll get some more and I'll finish that off. But I think this looks a lot better than before, and it's a lot higher, and it continues all the way over there. It joins the scene together very nicely. Process for gluing it down is relatively simple. I'm just going to wet the area with a spray bottle and then drip a load of PVA glue on it using my syringe. Later on I'm going to come back and I'll hit it with some Woodland Scenics scenic cement, which comes in like a nice spray bottle. This is just to get it to a point where it's not going to fall off or blow away or anything like that. And I'll come back over it with a further application of glue when I can get hold of some scenic cement. Next step is to just let that all dry, and then I'll come back and just check that it's reasonably secure. Okay, so all the scenery along this side that I've installed on the embankment has now dried. And I think it's looking pretty good. The trees add a lot of variation to it. It looks a lot better than it did before. It's a nice backdrop as the trains go past. The next thing I'm going to do is use some Woodland Scenics turfs just to blend some of the larger clumps in a little more and to try and get a little bit of extra height and get some extra colour in there. I'm going to be using three things. I've got some coarse turf in two different colours, and I've also got some underbrush in olive green. The underbrush is basically the bushes that I applied beforehand, although they're not quite as dense. It's more of a thinner material. And then the coarse turf is sort of like a halfway point between regular scatter and the underbrush, so that'll allow me to fill up any gaps that have appeared and just get a bit more of a blend going on. Okay, it's looking even better. Just added some more green to it, and the finer material has got into the gaps where I may have missed with the bushes. It looks really nice. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of finishing touches. I want to add some plants, a little bit of foliage, a little bit of colour, make some of the areas just pop and create a little bit more interest. To do that, I'm going to be using this stuff. I've only recently discovered it, I think partly because it's just called foliage, so whenever I've seen it before I've just assumed it's a bag of scatter. It's actually very different. It's quite clever stuff. What it is a scatter that's impregnated onto like a net, a sort of stretchy, fibrous type sheet. And what you can do is you can tear bits off and spread it out and do whatever you want with it. And the effect is quite good. It's available in all sorts of colours. You can get greens, dark greens, light greens, olive greens, and then there's also this mix here that's supposed to represent plant life. I've actually used some of the green sheet over there. You can't really see it because it blends in really nicely, but when you get in close you can see where it is. In fact, there's an example, I think, over here. There's some of it just there. It stretches out really nicely and just looks like a big sprawling group of plants or weeds. So I'm going to add a few bits in there, not massive, just a couple of bits, just to create some areas of interest where some plants were growing. Here you can see a piece I've torn off, and if I just stretch it out a little bit, you'll see the effect I'm on about. You can spread it nice and thin. I'm going to bring it back in now. That's the sort of thing you can do with it, and all the little pieces you don't see, the little hairs that join it all together, but you spread it even thinner than that, you get the effect of some nice plants or weeds or whatever, really. I just think it's really cool. It's a nice material to work with. So over here there's a couple of bits of lichen showing through, which is perfectly fine. Actually looks quite good. There's a little bit in the top by the top of the signal. What I'm going to do is give the effect of a type of plant that's growing through. There you go. The stuff's also really good for creating vines. If you get it in the green variety, you can create some really good vines, and they're also nice at covering up imperfections in the layout where you may have areas that haven't gone very well, or let's say you have a big gap between, let's say, a tunnel portal and your plaster base scenery. So they're really good for filling in gaps like that. I'll add another piece over here. I'm going to add these in sort of clusters. I don't want to just have them neatly and evenly spread across the entire scene. I want them to pop up in particular areas. So this area will be one of them. It's already looking quite good. You can add them to trees as well, create the effect of blooming trees. So there we go. I've put the plants in place, and I've hit it all with some scenic cement that's now dried so it's fairly secure up there. It's not indestructible, but it certainly isn't going to blow anywhere or go missing. A little bit of tidying up to do along the edges, which I was expecting. That's not too much of an issue, but I think it looks a hell of a lot better than it used to. So I'll go in for some close-ups, and I'll be back soon with another video.